stone coffin dug up in a Turkish church might actually be the real resting place of the original Saint Nicholas. Hidden for nearly 1,000 years was a massive Crusade-era altar, disguised as rubble and wall plaster, and in England, a medieval church relic turned up in a repair job, a mummified hand, claimed to be St. James. In a town in southern Turkey, archaeologists think they may have just found the real coffin of the original St. Nicholas, the guy who inspired Santa Claus. The stone sarcophagus was found at the Church of St. Nicholas, which has been an excavation site since the late 80s. The limestone coffin is about 6 feet long, buried 5 feet down, and was found in a 2-story annex of the church. According to Associate Professor Ebru Fatma Fandik, that they didn't even realize they were digging into a burial site until animal bones and clay lamps started showing up. That's when they hit the sarcophagus. St. Nicholas died in 343 and was buried at this site. Later, a grander church was built over it under Emperor Theodosius II, and that's when his remains were supposedly moved into this sarcophagus. In 1087, a group of sailors from Bari, Italy, broke into his tomb and took most of his bones back to their city. They placed them in a new shrine at the Basilica di San Nicola, where they're still kept today. But not all the bones were taken. During the First Crusade, around 1099, another group, this time from Venice, raided what was left of the tomb and took the remaining bones. So, in 1953, scientists confirmed that the bones from both cities came from the same person, but whether that's actually St. Nick is still up for debate. At the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem, one of the most sacred places in Christianity, archaeologists recently found something that had been sitting in plain sight for centuries. It's a massive stone altar from the Crusader period, dating back to the 1100s. For years, people thought it was just part of the wall, mostly because it was covered in layers of graffiti and chunks of fallen stone. But once researchers took a closer look, they realized that this thing had been deliberately carved and set in place as part of the original Crusader structure. It's built from massive limestone blocks, including one with a cross carved right into it. According to archaeologist David Gurvich, we've talked about a place where people believe Jesus was buried, so to uncover part of a forgotten altar from the Crusader period is huge. It had been partially destroyed over time, and a lot of it was buried under hundreds of years' worth of rubble. In Reading, England, a church relic resurfaced that people thought was lost forever. A mummified human hand said to belong to St. James the Apostle. It originally came from Reading Abbey, a huge medieval monastery founded in 1121 by King Henry I. During the 1500s, when King Henry VIII shut down England's monasteries and looted them, a lot of relics disappeared. Somehow this one survived though. It was hidden inside an iron box and rediscovered centuries later by workers doing repairs. Eventually, it made its way to St. Peter's Roman Catholic Church in Marlow, where it stayed locked away for years. The hand was, of course, dried and shriveled and partially wrapped in fabric, but it was still clearly human. Went back on display briefly in 2018 before being sent to be studied. Experts can't 100% prove it belonged to James the Apostle, but based on its age, the location, and how relics were handled at the time, it fits. In 2002, a collector went public with a limestone bone box known as an ossuary that had an inscription scratched into the side: James, son of Joseph, brother of Jesus. If it's legit, that's a huge deal. It would be the only known artifact that actually names Jesus of Nazareth. The box itself is real, dates back to the 1st century. Experts checked the aging on the stone, the weathering and the letters, all of it, but big question was whether the inscription was added much later to, boost its value. That started one of the longest and most expensive court battles in archaeology. The Israeli Antiquities Authority charged the owner with forgery. The whole thing turned into a circus. After years of trial, the charges were dropped. The science couldn't prove the inscription was fake. Some people still doubt it, but no one's been able to say for sure it's modern.
Imagine being forced to wear your own ransom note. Among the ruins of ancient Rome, archaeologists found an iron slave collar with an inscription that reads, "I have run away. "Hold me. When you return me to my master Zoninus, you will receive a gold coin." It's like a twisted version of a dog tag, except it was worn by a human being, possibly for their entire life. The collar tells a heartbreaking story in just a couple sentences. Not only was the enslaved person expected to live with their captivity, but strangers were openly encouraged to treat them like property for a reward. The emotional and physical weight of that collar makes it one of the most personal and disturbing artifacts ever uncovered in Roman history. 30 skeletons, no records, and no mercy. Underneath the Basilica of St. John in Ephesus, Turkey, Roman-era ruins revealed a pit of bodies. At least 30 men, women, piled on top of each other, some decapitated, others with shattered bones. What's bizarre is the lack of context. No tomb markers, no formal burial, no signs of mourning, just bodies hidden beneath sacred ground. Some scholars believe it was an act of religious persecution, others think it may have been a political purge or even a cultic mass execution. Whatever happened, it wasn't quick and it wasn't sanctioned. This haphazard way the bodies were dumped suggests someone wanted this event forgotten. Instead, it is now one of the most unnerving, unsolved Roman mysteries. In ancient Rome, even fame came with blood. Carved into the walls of Pompeii's amphitheater were inscriptions celebrating local gladiators, like a Roman version of fan accounts. One reads, "Salatius the Thracian makes the girls sigh." But alongside these adoring tributes are cruder images, depictions of savage wounds, mutilations, and even lists of kills. Some illustrations show men being impaled, others eaten alive by beasts. It's a window into the twisted entertainment of the time. These weren't just fights, they were bloodbaths, cheered on by thousands. And the fact that fans immortalized these moments in stone speaks volumes about the violence Rome celebrated. You could become a celebrity in the arena, but only if you died well. A nail through the skull says one thing: someone wanted you dead. In a quiet English village near Broughton, a Roman-era skull was uncovered with an iron nail driven directly through its head. It was the first physical evidence in Britain of a Roman crucifixion or ritual execution. The placement and force weren't random, it was a targeted strike. This suggests the Romans in Britain may have used more than just the cross. It was brutal, final, and likely meant to send a message. No records survive of who this person was, but the nail remains over 1,800 years later, a rusted and permanent reminder of just how cold Roman justice could be. A cult, a god, and a hidden corpse. In 2017, excavations in central Rome led to a surprise discovery beneath a commercial building. A Mithraeum, or temple to the mysterious god Mithras. These underground temples were the meeting place of a secretive male-only cult, but in this one, archaeologists found something that didn't belong. A skeleton carefully buried beneath the altar. There are no words of who this person was or why they were buried there, but it wasn't standard practice. Some speculate it was a priest buried in honor, others believe it could have been a human sacrifice, though such rites were never openly acknowledged in Mithraic tradition. Either way, the body was meant to remain hidden until now, I guess. They didn't bury the heads, they displayed them. Near the old Roman road in Suffolk, England, a mass grave was discovered filled with decapitated bodies, all neatly lined up, but with their skulls placed between their knees or beside their hands. Most were healthy adult males, showing signs of sudden, clean cuts to the neck. Experts believe this wasn't battlefield carnage, it was execution. But here is what is truly disturbing. The skulls were carefully repositioned, almost as if arranged for effect. Some even believe the positioning was ritualistic. Whether punishment, sacrifice, or display, the site has become known as the Decapitator's Field, a chilling testament to how the Roman Empire turned death into a public message. Ancient Rome wasn't just an empire of law and order, it was also an empire of control, punishment, and secrecy. These artifacts aren't just remnants of the past, they're evidence of lives lived in fear, of rituals performed in shadow, and of cruelty carried out with precision. The deeper we dig, the darker it gets. During renovations in 2017, staff stumbled upon a concealed chamber containing crates, documents, and sketches belonging to the eccentric Cornelius S.C. Rotter, the building's mysterious former owner. Among his bizarre collection was this unsettling figure, carefully crafted from animal fur, bones, and disturbingly lifelike materials, sparking whispers of occult rituals and forbidden practices. Museum curators remain baffled, uncertain whether Rotter intended this creature as dark art, a ceremonial relic, or something far more sinister. Whatever the truth, it now remains locked safely away from public eyes, hidden in the back rooms, perhaps for our own protection. Hidden away in a museum's shadowy backroom sits a grotesque artifact that blurs the line between myth and nightmare. The skeletal remains of what can only be described as a centaur, a creature straight out of ancient Greek legend. Discovered tucked away behind locked doors in a European curiosity museum, this bizarre skeleton immediately sparked wild rumors about its origins. Constructed with startling anatomical precision, the piece seamlessly combines genuine human and equine bones, fueling unsettling theories of secret experiments or occult rituals conducted centuries ago. Museum insiders have hinted that the skeleton's origins trace back to an obscure 18th century collector known for his obsession with mythological hybrids, though details remain intentionally vague. Whether a twisted scientific hoax or a dark artifact with a genuinely cursed past, one thing's clear: there's a good reason it's being hidden far from the eyes of the public. Tucked away in a dimly lit museum storage room, hidden from public view, stands an artifact so strange it immediately sparks a sense of dread. A skeletal creature with oversized, almost alien features, known simply as the Atacama skeleton. Originally discovered in Chile's Atacama Desert, early tests baffled researchers due to its tiny size, elongated skull, and startlingly abnormal anatomy, fueling wild theories that ranged from extraterrestrial life to ancient curses. More detailed analysis eventually confirmed it was human, yet the mutations that warped its bones remained an eerie mystery, some speculating that ancient rituals or secretive experiments were involved. Now locked away behind closed doors, the skeleton remains a haunting relic, too unsettling to display openly, too intriguing to completely discard. Hidden deep within a museum's forbidden archives lies an artifact straight from your darkest childhood fears, a tiny, grotesque mummy known ominously as the Pixie specimen. Recovered by a private collector known as Alex CF, this bizarre creature has sparked unsettling debates about its origins. With its shrunken, shriveled body, disturbingly lifelike features, and remnants of fiery red hair, it appears horrifyingly genuine. Some speculate it was crafted as a macabre Victorian curiosity, while others believe it to be physical evidence of mythological beings like fairies or pixies secretly studied by occult societies. Locked away and rarely mentioned publicly, the Pixie specimen remains shrouded in secrecy, its unsettling presence haunting museum curators brave enough to enter the back room alone. Hidden in a dark museum storeroom lies an artifact so terrifying it feels plucked straight from sailor legends, known as the Fiji mermaid. Originally displayed in sideshows during the 19th century, this particular specimen is among the most unnerving ever discovered. Combining the dried upper torso of a monkey with the scaly body of a fish, its grotesque, glassy-eyed stare has sparked rumors of dark rituals, curses, and sightings of real aquatic humanoids. Sailors once believed owning a Fiji mermaid brought storms, shipwrecks, and madness, making museums hesitant to place them openly on display. Locked away, carefully hidden from public view, this creature now sits silently, fueling chilling whispers about what else the seas and secret museum storerooms might be hiding. These weren't prayers, they were handwritten spells of destruction. Discovered at the sacred site of Acay Solace, modern-day Bath, England, were over 100 lead curse tablets thrown into a Roman temple spring. People would scratch angry, revenge-fueled messages onto these thin sheets, then toss them into the water in hopes that the gods would do their dirty work. One tablet reads, "To the god Sullus, I give the person who has stolen my cloak. May he be unable to sleep or eat until it is returned." Others weren't as tame. Some asked for their enemies to be blinded or driven insane. What's even more chilling? Many were written backward or in mirrored Latin, a common method of dark magic to confuse spirits into obeying without question. These weren't petty squabbles. These were the dark side of divine justice in ancient Rome. They didn't just die in chains. They were buried in them. When a Roman-era cemetery was unearthed in York, England, archaeologists expected the usual: burial urns, organized tombs, and respectful interments. What they found instead was horrifying. Over 80 skeletons, many buried face down, some missing limbs or skulls, and at least 11 of them still shackled at the ankles with heavy iron restraints. These weren't soldiers or heroes. They were criminals, slaves, or outcasts, cast into the ground as if their punishment had to follow them into death. Some showed signs of trauma, others evidence of decapitation, suggesting violent ends. Even stranger, the shackles appeared custom forged for human wrists and ankles, meaning someone deliberately designed these for long-term suffering. It is a brutal reminder that Rome's justice didn't end with death. A hand severed not by violence, but by design. While excavating the Roman fort at Vindolanda near Hadrian's Wall, archaeologists found what at first looked like a piece of scrap metal, but upon cleaning it, it revealed itself as a perfect bronze replica of a human hand, life-sized, eerily detailed, and buried deliberately beneath the threshold of a shrine to Jupiter Dolichenes, a god of war and thunder worshipped by Roman soldiers. This wasn't some innocent offering. Scholars believe it may have played a role in blood rituals or protective ceremonies. The way it was buried, facing upward, palm outstretched, suggests a symbolic gesture, possibly welcoming or warding off spirits. Whether it represented sacrifice or protection, the hand's presence still puzzles experts, and many believe it had a far darker function than we'll ever know. Beautiful on the outside, deadly on the inside. Buried in the ash of Mount Vesuvius's wrath, archaeologists exploring Pompeii uncovered a deceptively elegant gold ring, but inside the band was a tiny hollow compartment, perfect for storing poison. These so-called venom rings were often used by political assassins or desperate lovers, allowing the wearer to discreetly drop toxins into drinks or food with a subtle flick of the hand. The fact that this ring survived the catastrophic eruption is eerie enough, but the real question is, who wore it? Was it ever used? Or did its owner plan something that nature interrupted? Either way, it's a chilling reminder that beneath the empire's glamour, betrayal could literally be worn on your finger.
Now this is cool. In early 2024, a group of archaeologists were digging in the Panama jungle when they opened a tomb that hadn't been touched in over 1,000 years. And what was inside? A whole bunch of treasure. There were gold belts, gold plates, earrings shaped like crocodiles, bells, bone flutes, and I never thought I'd say this out loud in my life, but there was also a skirt made out of dog teeth. Yeah, dog teeth. As for who was buried there, they're calling him the Lord of the Flutes, but he actually wasn't alone. Archaeologists say up to 31 other people were sacrificed and buried with him. The tomb was completely hidden under the jungle and totally untouched. And the level of gold and craftsmanship here was impressive. One researcher said the discovery had, quote, incalculable historical and cultural value, end quote. Now, this wasn't the kind of place archaeologists expected to find a burial like this. It's not one of the major empires like the Aztec or Maya. It's just a small group living out in the jungle. So how did this much gold end up here? And who was this guy? No one's really sure, but it definitely makes you wonder how much we still don't know about ancient civilizations hiding out out in the rainforest. This wasn't even supposed to be a discovery. In 2024, a grad student named Luke Thomas was going through some old LiDAR data, basically laser scans of the jungle done to check on forest health, nothing to do with archaeology in this case. But then he noticed something odd. There were strange lines, big rectangles, stuff that didn't look natural at all. And it turns out he just found an entire lost Maya city that no one had any idea existed. They're calling it Valeriana, and it's massive. There are over 6,000 buildings with pyramids, ball courts, plazas, roads, and a water system. And the wildest part is that it was just sitting under the trees the whole time. Experts think as many as 50,000 people lived there around 750 to 850 CE, and somehow this whole place got completely forgotten. It's like if someone found a major city the size of San Francisco completely covered in forest and just nobody noticed it for over 1,000 years. That's how unexplored this part of the jungle is. In 2023, archaeologist Ivan Sprayitz and his team were deep in the Mexican jungle, just hacking through trees with machetes, and that's when they came across something massive. It was an entire lost Maya city totally swallowed by the forest. They'd set out to see what was up after scanning the forest with LiDAR. They named the place Akamtun, which means stone column in the Yucatec Maya language, and that's because this place is filled with giant stone pillars. They found pyramids, ceremonial plazas, altars, carved staircases, and a ball court, all built high up on natural terraces to keep everything above flood level. According to Sprayitz, when we got there, our suspicions were confirmed. Architecturally, it was truly massive. They think Akamtun was at its peak between 600 and 900, the late classic Maya period. It's probably a pretty important city, but obviously, at some point it was abandoned and totally forgotten. And it just sat there for over 1,000 years, buried under layers of trees and vines. So back in 2015, scientists exploring the Mesquite jungle in Honduras found something that for a long time had only been a legend. A lost city buried deep in the rainforest, filled with stone sculptures of jaguars, half-human creatures, thrones, all kinds of ceremonial objects. They nicknamed it the City of the Jaguar. This place is interesting because it lines up with old stories about La Ciudad Blanca, or the White City, a legendary place that's been part of folklore for ages. Just nobody had any proof it existed. The whole thing started with a LiDAR scan. They noticed straight lines under the trees, so a team led by archaeologist Christopher Fisher and filmmaker Steve Elkins went to check it out, and they found what Fisher called the most undisturbed site he'd ever been part of. He told National Geographic, "This is not like finding a pot in a museum. It's the whole site with context intact, and that's incredibly rare." Another archaeologist, Oscar Neil Cruz from the Honduran Institute of Anthropology, called it one of the greatest archaeological discoveries of the 21st century. Strangely, no one knows exactly who built this place. It's not Maya. It's like an entire culture just rose up, built this city, then disappeared without a trace. Now these are weird. Tiny gold artifacts found in Colombia made by the Cumbaya people over 1,000 years ago. They look suspiciously like airplanes. They've got wings, tail fins, some even have what looks like landing gear, and yes, they're made entirely of gold. Archaeologists say they're probably stylized animals like birds, bats, or insects, but still, some of these things look a little too aerodynamic. That's why people call them the Cumbaya airplanes. They've built models based on these designs, scaled them up, and guess what? A few of them actually flew. Now, to be clear, again, most researchers still say they're just abstract animal figures, but I mean, it's hard not to at least wonder, how did a pre-Columbian jungle culture make gold figurines that just so happen to resemble modern jets and are aerodynamic enough to actually fly when scaled up in some cases? Either these are some really creative animal carvings, or the Cumbaya knew something that we didn't. In the deep Belizean jungle at a Maya site called Luminai, archaeologists started finding copper tools, stuff like bells, tweezers, fish hooks, which is already strange, considering the Maya weren't big on metalwork, and finding them this far inland was especially weird. Most of the copper wasn't local. Instead, it was traced back to places hundreds of miles away, mainly in western and central Mexico. This proves that the ancient Maya were part of a huge trade network. The copper items were clearly considered rare and valuable, used for rituals and trade, and they totally mess with the old idea that the Maya didn't care about metal until the Spanish showed up. Also, goes to show just how connected these societies were. As one researcher, Geoffrey Braswell, put it, the finds show how, quote, Mesoamerican societies were much more interconnected than we previously believed. It's not just that the tools are interesting, it's how they got there. These were jungle cities with no wheels, no horses, nothing like that, but they still managed to trade for copper from hundreds of miles away. This one kind of looks like nothing. I mean, just an old bone at first glance, but the Ashango bone, found near the headwaters of the Nile close to the Congo jungle, is over 20,000 years old. It might be the oldest known math tool. It's a small bone, probably from a baboon, with carved notches grouped into patterns. Scientists noticed some of the marks seem to show multiplication, division, prime numbers. One column shows numbers like 11, 13, 17, and 19, which is not random. Dirk Hoylebroek, a Belgian mathematician who studied it, wrote, "The structure of the markings is clearly purposeful. This is evidence of a prehistoric number sense," end quote. Now, not everyone agrees on what the bone was used for. Some think it was a lunar calendar. Others say a tally stick, but either way, it's way more advanced than anyone expected for that time. It was found in 1960 near the Semliki River in modern-day Democratic Republic of the Congo, and is now housed in a museum in Brussels. Alright, so this one is controversial. The Ica stones are a bunch of smooth black rocks with carvings on them, found near Ica, Peru. Some show normal stuff like animals, but others show people using telescopes, doing surgery, and interacting with dinosaurs. A farmer named Basilio Uchuya claimed he found them in a cave in the 60s. He admitted to faking some of them, but then he said he was forced to say that to avoid prison for selling antiques. So the whole thing's a mess. Most experts say the stones are modern fakes, especially since no one's ever found them in a properly documented dig. The Peruvian government officially labeled them as hoaxes, but for some reason they still keep popping up in museums and conspiracy videos. And you know, hey, I'm one to talk, but I find these things kind of compelling. Are they definitive proof that history was very different than mainstream science would have you believe? No. Are they weird enough to get my attention though? Absolutely. For years, scientists thought the Amazon was mostly just uncharted wilderness, but when deforestation and LiDAR scans started peeling back the trees, they showed hundreds of huge geometric shapes carved into the land. Circles, squares, straight roads, way too precise to be natural. A 2022 study in Science described over 450 of these geoglyphs in the Acre region of Brazil. They're estimated to be up to 2,000 years old. The shapes were made by clearing forest and digging deep ditches. Not easy work without modern equipment. And what makes it even more interesting is that there are no large ruins nearby like pyramids or cities. These things were just out in the middle of nowhere. In 2021, archaeologists digging at Xingshui, an ancient ruins site in southern China, pulled a massive gold mask out of a sacrificial pit. This place has been turning up weird stuff for decades, but this mask got a lot of attention. It's over 3,000 years old, has big staring eyes, huge ears, and a thin little mouth carved into it. It weighs about half a pound. It doesn't match the usual style of Chinese artifacts from that time though. It's not from the Shang dynasty or any of the big name cultures you usually hear about. It came from the Shu civilization, a lost culture that we still know very little about. No one really knows why they buried all this stuff in deep pits or why their art looks so different from everything else around it. In 2023, archaeologists in Germany found something strange in a Roman-era grave. A silver scroll buried with a man who died nearly 1,800 years before. When they carefully unrolled the scroll, found it was inscribed with 18 lines of Greek writing, including the names of Jesus, Mary, and several Christian saints. That alone was wild, because this was found in Frankfurt, way north of where Christianity was thought to have spread at the time. The guy was buried sometime between 230 and 270 CE, which means Christians were already up there way earlier than anyone thought, about 100 years ahead of the usual timeline. Researchers say the writing on the scroll was meant to act like a charm or spiritual protection. The scroll itself is tiny, just a few inches long, and was buried in an iron capsule next to the man's remains. According to archaeologist Dr. Erwin Emmerling, This is the earliest physical evidence of Christianity in this region, and it changes what we thought we knew about how fast it spread. In 2023, construction crews were doing work near an old Dominican monastery in Poland when they cracked open something really cool, a medieval knight's tomb. It had a massive stone slab with a full carving of a knight in armor, sword, shield, all of it. When archaeologists lifted it, there was a skeleton laid out perfectly underneath, exactly where you'd expect him to be. The carving was done on limestone from Gotland, which is a Swedish island. The knight was tall, probably someone important, and this grave was built to show it. The carving had symbols like a coat of arms, so whoever buried him wanted people to know exactly who he was, or at least that he was worth remembering. The area used to be a church cemetery way back in the 12th century, and this tomb probably dates to the 1200s or 1300s. And fun fact, the whole thing was under what used to be an ice cream shop. So the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem is supposed to be the spot where Jesus was crucified, buried, and resurrected. It's one of the most famous religious sites in the world, but while restoring part of the floor, researchers found something small but weirdly important: ancient seeds. They dug down and found traces of grape seeds, olive pits, and pollen buried in the soil under the church. Now, that doesn't sound all that exciting, but those plants match up with the gospel descriptions of a garden being nearby at the time of the crucifixion. Grapes and olives were big in that region, especially for things like wine and oil used in rituals, so finding that kind of evidence under the building is kind of cool. The seeds were found in layers that date back about 2,000 years, so the timeline lines up as well. Doesn't prove every detail of the story, obviously, but it's enough to make archaeologists pretty excited. Right near the southern wall of the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, archaeologists were digging in a spot known as the Opal and ended up finding a stash of Byzantine gold. They found a small stash of gold buried in the floor, like actual treasure. There were 36 gold coins, a gold bar, 2 earrings, and a round medallion engraved with a menorah, a Torah scroll, and a shofar. That medallion is cool because it's Jewish imagery, but it was found in a Christian-era building. The coins date back to around the early 600s, right before the Persian army rolled through the city, so it looks like someone buried their valuables before things got ugly and just never made it back. It sat undisturbed for 1,400 years. The fact that Jewish religious symbols were found inside a Christian-era home also shows that this part of the city wasn't strictly divided. People were living close together, even if they didn't believe the same things, and all that info came from a handful of gold buried in someone's floor. Archaeologists digging in northern Ethiopia found the ruins of a 4th century Christian church. It's the oldest one discovered so far in sub-Saharan Africa. The site's called Beta Samati, and it used to be part of the Aksumite Empire, a big trade hub back in the day. The church was built in basilica style with stone walls, columns, and a central platform that lines up with early Christian designs from the Roman world. Found crosses, ceramic incense burners, carved pendants, a gold ring with a bull's head on it. That ring probably came from somewhere outside Ethiopia, maybe traded in from Jordan or Arabia. There were also dozens of small animal figurines, mostly of cattle, scattered around the site. Inscriptions found inside mention Christ by name, which is a big deal considering how early this site is. This means Christianity had, of course, already reached this part of Africa by the early 300s, so way earlier than most people thought. The area was connected to trading routes that stretched all the way to the Middle East, so ideas, goods, and religions were constantly flowing through. And in 2021, archaeologists working in northern Jordan explored an old underground church built inside a cave, and inside it they came across a tiny lead scroll covered in ancient writing. The church had been carved into the rock and might be one of the earliest places where Christians gathered in secret. The scroll was tightly rolled, only about the size of a matchstick, so they had to scan it with high-res imaging to even read what was inside. The writing's in ancient Hebrew, and even though some of it still hasn't been fully decoded, early scans showed names linked to Jesus and what might be early Christian symbols. The scroll might have been used like a prayer or a kind of protective charm, something people back then would have kept hidden from Roman authorities, which is why this was found buried under the church's altar. Researchers are still being cautious about dating it, but think it could push back written references to early Christianity by decades, maybe even from the 1st century. If that's the case, this could be one of the earliest written traces of Christianity outside of Jerusalem.
Imagine an entire Egyptian city vanishing beneath the sea and staying hidden for nearly 2,000 years. That's exactly what happened off of Abu Qir Bay near Alexandria. Recent underwater excavations revealed the ruins of Canopus, a city once known for lavish festivals and religious rites that attracted people from across the ancient world. What divers found beneath the waves was eerie. There were massive stone statues lying headless on the seafloor, coins scattered across the sand, marble figures with limbs missing, and even carved docks and warehouses that looked like they were abandoned in a single moment of chaos. Archaeologists believe earthquakes and tsunamis swallowed the city whole, locking away its treasures for centuries. Even today, many of the relics remain too fragile to move. They sit underwater, preserved but out of reach, like a time capsule of disaster. It's disturbing to realize that a place once filled with music, rituals, and life now rests silent in the dark, its secrets still locked away from the public. In 2008, archaeologists digging in the ruins of Akhenaten, in the city built by the pharaoh Akhenaten, found a tiny object that didn't look like much. It was a whistle carved from the toe bone of a young cow. At first, it was catalogued and quietly stored away, but when researchers finally re-examined it years later, they realized that it was over 3,300 years old and was far more unsettling than it seemed. This wasn't a toy. It was likely used by a guard or police officer to control access to the sacred tombs being built nearby. Replicas proved the whistle made a sharp, piercing sound, the kind that could stop workers in their tracks. What makes it disturbing is the glimpse it gives us into the control and surveillance that existed even in the ancient world. A simple bone whistle, hidden in storage for years, turns out to be the echo of authority and fear in one of Egypt's most sacred places. In the 1800s, archaeologists began unearthing mummies in the Fayum region with something highly unusual: incredibly lifelike painted portraits covering their faces. Unlike the stylized, stiff art of ancient Egypt, these paintings looked almost like photographs. The eyes were hauntingly realistic, the expressions deeply human, but what disturbed experts most was that some of these portraits looked like they belonged in a modern art gallery rather than on 2,000-year-old mummies. Imagine a delicate hat made of organic stuff, surviving thousands of years just because it was forgotten in storage. This is the story of a sun hat found in Ilahan in the Fayum region in Egypt back in 1888. It's dated to be between 2,100 and 2,400 years old, so roughly from the Greek or Roman period in Egypt. Experts believe it was likely worn by a Roman soldier or someone under Roman influence adapting to the Egyptian climate. What makes it disturbing or eerie is how fragile textile artifacts usually are. Most textile pieces decay very quickly unless the conditions are perfect. This hat survived because the ground was very dry, but for over 115 years it was just in storage at Bolton Museum in the UK, almost completely out of sight. Its survival seemed almost miraculous, not because it had supernatural properties, but because of how unlikely it was that something so perishable would continue to exist. And now it is finally on display. In the late 19th century, archaeologists working in the ancient Egyptian city of Oxyrhynchus discovered an enormous collection of papyrus manuscripts buried in the sand. We're talking hundreds of thousands of fragments. Among them were poems, lost plays from ancient Greece, and even religious writings that never made it into the Bible. What disturbed scholars most was how many of these texts contradicted what we thought we knew about the ancient world. Some writings hinted at secret rituals, while others contained stories that were simply too strange to classify. The sheer volume was overwhelming, and for years, most of the collection was hidden away in storage at Oxford University. Even today, researchers estimate that less than 10% of the papyri have been translated, meaning countless secrets are still locked away. Locked away in a museum's hidden chambers lies a chilling reminder of humanity's ancient past, the shockingly preserved body of the Tulland man. Discovered buried deep in a Danish peat bog, this 2,400-year-old Iron Age sacrifice victim looks disturbingly fresh, as if frozen in eternal sleep. Thanks to the bog's unique chemistry, scientists were not only able to determine exactly what his final meal was, but they could even lift his fingerprints after thousands of years. The rope still tightened around his neck suggests a grim, ritualistic end, fueling unsettling stories about ancient curses or vengeful spirits connected to his death. Museums carefully restrict access to him, afraid not just of damaging this priceless artifact, but perhaps wary of something darker lingering around the Tulland man's eternal resting place. Buried deep inside the vault of an undisclosed museum lies a chilling artifact you'd hope never to encounter. A bizarre, two-headed, bat-like creature preserved with disturbingly lifelike realism. Known simply as the dual-headed bat, this twisted specimen was first rumored to be discovered hidden within an old Victorian mansion, stashed away inside a locked chest marked with strange, illegible symbols. Its grotesque appearance, featuring sharp teeth, elongated limbs, and unsettlingly expressive faces, immediately sparked rumors of occult practices and dark alchemical experiments from the past. Curators remain tight-lipped about its true origins, perhaps fearing that its mysterious presence brings with it sinister energies best left undisturbed. Hidden in the deepest archives of a museum's forbidden collection rests an object so chilling, many believe it holds a genuine demonic presence: the horned demon mummy. Sealed carefully in a velvet-lined wooden box, this tiny skeletal figure with sharp horns, pointed ears, and grotesque fur-covered legs immediately conjures images of dark rituals and forbidden occult ceremonies. Rumored to have originated from an 18th century occultist who claimed to have summoned creatures from the infernal realms, this artifact was quietly donated to the museum under very mysterious circumstances, accompanied by warnings never to open its enclosure after midnight. Museum employees whisper tales of strange noises and unexplained shadows around its location, leading to it being carefully locked away, far from curious eyes that might accidentally awaken something best left sleeping. Hidden deep within a museum's secret storeroom sits Sydney Knows, an antique fortune-telling machine with a reputation darker than its cheerful, painted smile would suggest. Originally popular in the early 20th century arcades, visitors would insert a penny and eagerly await Sydney's predictions printed on small cards. But soon, unsettling stories emerged. Sydney's predictions often came disturbingly true, frequently foretelling accidents, illnesses, or tragedy. Some visitors claimed the doll's eyes would follow them, and whispers circulated of late-night workers hearing laughter or seeing Sydney operate without being activated. Frightened by the growing legend, museum staff quietly removed the machine from display, locking it securely away, though some still wonder if Sydney already knows exactly what awaits those who disturb him again. In a dimly lit museum archive sits one of the most unsettling children's books ever created, a pop-up book titled Medical Oddities: Nature's Anomalies and Carnival Gaffes. While pop-up books usually enchant children with playful characters, this particular volume does exactly the opposite. It is definitely not a children's book. Within its pages lurks a disturbingly realistic, mummified human face, accompanied by eerie photographs and unsettling descriptions of sideshow performers and bizarre anatomical specimens. Originally created as a macabre curiosity from the Neville Colmore collection, the book quickly gained notoriety when rumors began to surface about it causing nightmares, insomnia, and unexplained illnesses among those who dared to read it. Museum curators quietly pulled it from public display, locking it securely away, wary of the strange aura and the unsettling feeling that some pages are better left unopened.
Once again, in March of this year, archaeologists in Egypt made a pretty fascinating discovery: an ancient tomb that's over 3,200 years old. The tomb is believed to belong to a military commander who might have served under the famous pharaoh Ramses III. The site has a burial chamber along with 3 additional rooms, and they found some pretty amazing artifacts there. There was a golden ring with the name of Ramses III on it, along with a bunch of bronze arrowheads and pottery vessels that were inscribed with the name of Pharaoh Horemheb, meaning that this tomb was probably reused over time, which was actually common in ancient Egypt, especially if a tomb became more well-known or valuable after its initial use. What makes this find so interesting is that it gives us a real look at life when Egypt was at its peak. The fact that they found artifacts linked to both Ramses III and Horemheb means the person buried here was probably pretty important. Maybe a top military leader or someone with close ties to the pharaohs. It also shows how connected Egypt's elite were and how much power the military had at the time. Basically, it's another clue in figuring out how ancient Egypt really worked. News of this next find in Texas is also super fresh. Archaeologists digging in the San Esteban rock shelter in Big Bend discovered a treasure trove of ancient weaponry. They found these ancient spear throwers called atlatls. They also found boomerangs. It's insane because it gives us a glimpse into how people were hunting and fighting way back in the day, and I mean before even bows and arrows. They also found some fossilized poop and a pronghorn hide that was carefully tanned. So not only do we get to imagine what these ancient hunters looked like, but now we know what they were eating as well. The best part is researchers planning to put together a full reconstruction of the weaponry, so soon we'll have a pretty good idea of how these ancient tools worked. In 2024, archaeologists in Mexico made a seriously strange discovery under the Temple of the Feathered Serpent at Teotihuacan. They found a tunnel with a miniature landscape. There were tiny mountains and pools of liquid mercury, all dating around 1800 years back. It's wild because liquid mercury isn't something you typically find in ancient sites, especially not in these kinds of quantities. But that's not all. They also found wooden masks, detailed necklaces, and hundreds of these tiny metal spheres, which is giving us a better idea of what the Teotihuacan people believed and how they practiced their rituals. Some experts think the mercury and the mini landscape might represent the underworld, or maybe some kind of sacred connection to the gods. It shows how much the Teotihuacan culture was tied to the cosmos and their environment. What makes this find so important as well is that the Teotihuacan is one of the most powerful and mysterious civilizations in ancient Mexico, and this discovery just adds to the mystery. The use of mercury in rituals, which was considered sacred, gives us new insight into their spiritual life. A reminder that there's still just a lot about these ancient cultures we haven't begun to fully understand. In 2019, archaeologists discovered something pretty incredible in Byblos, Lebanon, a hidden Bronze Age necropolis. The site has 8 tombs cut into rock, connected by tunnels. It was found just outside the sacred Acropolis, meaning that it might have been connected to the nearby Temple of the Obelisks. The tombs themselves are pretty fascinating, but the real treasures are the artifacts they found inside. They dug up jewelry, pottery, and weapons. These items were beautiful and show just how skilled the craftsmen were back then, and as researchers keep digging, they're learning more about what life was really like there. In 2024, archaeologists dug up something crazy under Petra, the ancient city in Jordan. They found a hidden tomb with the remains of at least 12 people. It's about 2,000 years old, dating back to when the Nabateans were still around. The tomb gave researchers a peek at how the Nabateans buried their dead. The bodies were found in different positions, which could mean there was some kind of burial ritual involved. The tomb itself was carved straight into the rock, typical Nabatean style, and inside they found pottery, jewelry, and tools, probably stuff meant for the afterlife. The discovery is a big deal because it tells us more about how the Nabateans lived, what they believed, and how they dealt with all the different cultures that were passing through Petra. The artifacts found with the remains show how people from different backgrounds mixed in with the city, which was a major trade-off.
In 1907, archaeologists uncovered a Middle Kingdom tomb containing 2 mummies. At first, the discovery seemed ordinary, but when researchers examined the remains, they found something shocking. The mummies were preserved with extraordinary care, but their DNA revealed that they weren't actually brothers by blood. One was of Egyptian descent, while the other had Nubian ancestry. Their lavish burial together in a tomb meant for close relatives challenged long-held assumptions about Egyptian family structures and identity. The unsettling discovery suggested that ancient Egyptians may have deliberately blurred the lines of kinship, perhaps for political or ritual reasons. The artifacts from the tomb were quietly kept from the public for decades, as the findings didn't fit the clean narrative of Egyptian history being taught at the time. In the Cairo Museum, hidden away from display for years, is a mysterious carved stone slab covered in what some researchers claim looks like a map. It was nicknamed the Dashka stone. The strange part? Some believe the lines and patterns on it resemble river systems and geological features of Egypt that would not have been known thousands of years ago. Even more disturbing, a few claimed it even shows areas that could only be mapped with aerial knowledge. Mainstream Egyptologists insist it's just decorative or symbolic, but the controversy around it led to the artifact being locked in storage rather than displayed to the public. Whether it's an ancient oddity or evidence of forgotten knowledge, the fact that it's rarely studied makes it all the more mysterious. Discovered in the late 1800s at the site of Akhenaten, the Amarna letters were clay tablets written in cuneiform that documented correspondence between the Egyptian pharaohs and other rulers of the ancient Near East. At first glance, they look like routine diplomatic texts, but a closer reading revealed something deeply unsettling. They contained desperate pleas from vassal states begging Egypt for military aid, warnings of invasions, and even references to mysterious groups like the Hibiru, often linked to early Hebrews. These records painted Egypt not as an invincible empire, but as a kingdom struggling to maintain control. The fragile image of ancient Egypt as unstoppable was shattered, and for years, many of these letters were hidden away in archives. They revealed a far more chaotic and vulnerable world than people were comfortable admitting. In 1954, archaeologists found a massive cedarwood ship buried at the foot of the Great Pyramid of Giza. It was sealed in a limestone pit and perfectly preserved for over 4,000 years. At first it seemed like a stunning treasure, but the more experts studied it, the stranger it became. The ship was fully functional, large enough to sail, yet there was no evidence it had ever touched water. Instead, it appeared to be a symbolic solar bark meant to carry Pharaoh Khufu into the afterlife. What disturbed some researchers was the craftsmanship. The ship was built with incredible precision, using a construction method that seemed far too advanced for its time. The discovery was so strange that for years the boat was hidden from the public, only restored and displayed decades later. Even now, many of its mysteries remain unsolved. In 2015, archaeologists announced the discovery of an underground tomb in Abu Sir that they believed was dedicated to the god Osiris. The tomb included a large central shaft leading to a chamber with a black sarcophagus surrounded by smaller burial chambers. The layout was eerily similar to ancient descriptions of the mythical tomb of Osiris himself. Some scholars dismissed the connection as symbolic, but the imagery inside was disturbing. There were carvings depicting demons, protective deities, and scenes of resurrection. The sarcophagus was empty, but the fact that the tomb matched so closely with myth raised unsettling questions. Was this just a symbolic temple, or had someone once been buried as a living embodiment of Osiris? For years, the site was closed to the public, accessible only to researchers. The secrecy has only fueled speculation that there was something inside the tomb the world wasn't ready to see.
So this is absolutely nuts. Just a few days back, at the time of this recording, an article came out in The Sun about a crazy discovery at the pyramids of Giza, or rather, under them. Apparently, some researchers are claiming that they have found evidence of this massive hidden city beneath the pyramids. A whole underground network under one of the most famous places on Earth. So using this fancy technology called synthetic aperture radar, or SAR, researchers reportedly found what could be a sprawling city, complete with buildings and maybe even water systems. Now the thing is, not everyone is on board with this discovery. While some are totally hyped about the potential of finding a forgotten city, others think it's just a little too far-fetched. Still, the team behind the find is pushing for more digs to confirm what's beneath the surface. If real, it could totally change what we thought we knew about ancient Egypt, and maybe even the way the pyramids were built. As of right now though, we'll just have to hold out for more information. In Turkey, archaeologists recently dug up a sarcophagus under the Church of St. Nicholas in Demre. It might just be the tomb of the real St. Nicholas, the guy who eventually became the inspiration for Santa Claus. You heard it here first, folks. Santa's coffin has been found. The real St. Nicholas was a 4th century bishop known for his generosity, especially toward children. He lived in what's now Turkey, and over the centuries his legend morphed into the figure we all know today. There's a fun twist to this story though. Back in the 11th century, some Italian merchants allegedly stole his remains and took them to Italy, claiming them as their own. So for a long time people weren't sure where the real St. Nicholas ended up. But now, with this sarcophagus find, it looks like we might have actually found the real answer. The sarcophagus is made of limestone and has some cool carvings on it that could tell us more about who he was. This could change the whole story, from the man who gave gifts to kids in secret to the red-suited Santa we all love today. In March of 2025, archaeologists made a huge discovery in Egypt, this time in the ancient necropolis of Abydos. They came across a tomb that's believed to belong to a pharaoh no one knew about until now. The tomb, which is around 3,600 years old, was found about 7 meters underground, or about 23 feet. It had clearly been looted over the years, but what was left behind still gave researchers a lot to work with. Abydos is a pretty famous spot for ancient Egyptian burials, so this tomb is kind of a big deal. It's thought to belong to one of 2 pharaohs who are mentioned in some ancient records, but whose actual tombs have never been found. The archaeologists involved in the discovery said, "We have identified the name on the entrance, but much of the text has been damaged. We believe this is the tomb of one of the lesser-known kings who ruled during a fractured time in Egypt's history." End quote. So the second intermediate period, which this tomb was built, was a time when Egypt was divided and dealing with invaders, so finding this tomb could give them new clues about the politics of that specific time. In early 2025, archaeologists made a pretty wild discovery in the Judean desert. They came across a pyramid-shaped structure that's about 2,200 years old, along with a bunch of ancient bronze coins and other artifacts. Pyramid, made from carefully cut stones, was found alongside some items that could shed light on the area's ancient history. Now, this pyramid isn't like the big ones we know in Egypt, of course, but it's still a pretty big deal. Some think it might have been a guard tower, others believe it could have been a tomb marker or a monument. Now, on top of that, they found a bunch of bronze coins dating back to the Hellenistic period, a time when Greek rulers like Antiochus IV Epiphanes were in charge. The coins had his name on them, that's how they knew. Now, the Judean desert isn't exactly known for big pyramids, so it's making researchers really rethink how important this area might have been back then. In 2024, a team of archaeologists came across something pretty incredible in Turkey again, a fully intact ancient Roman bakery. The discovery, which was made in Pompeii, has been getting a lot of attention because it's so well preserved. The bakery, which dates back to around 2,000 years ago, was found with large ovens and grinding tools and bread molds still in place. The team found all sorts of neat stuff like this. There were a bunch of clay baking ovens, and some of the molds still had the imprints of loaves or baked there. It's not every day you come across something this well preserved, so researchers were pretty excited. One of the archaeologists said that this was one of the, quote, best preserved ancient bakeries we've ever discovered. It's like stepping back in time to see how bread was made in the Roman Empire. So when we think of ancient Roman archaeology, it's always, it's the big grand buildings, the colosseums, statues, military stuff as well. That's usually what comes to mind, but this find is pretty cool because it gives us a closer look at just the regular day-to-day life in ancient Rome. People were baking bread, going about their lives, and now, thanks to this find, we can see how they did it all. Obviously, the content of the carvings doesn't match what we know about prehistoric times, and there is zero proof they come from the distant past. Even still, the stones have become super popular with conspiracy theorists who want to believe that the Flintstones was historically accurate. Hey, I do too. The drop of stones are one of those artifacts that sound a little too weird to be real, which is probably why they've become such a legend in ancient alien circles. Story goes like this. In the 1930s, a group of Chinese archaeologists were exploring caves high in the Bayan Mountains of Tibet and supposedly found a bunch of stone discs. about a foot across, each carved with spiral grooves. In total, there were said to be 12 of these things. The markings, once decoded, told the story of a spaceship that crash-landed 12,000 years before. The beings inside were called the Drapa, and they couldn't return home, so they settled in the mountains. The tale blew up in UFO communities, and the stones have been referenced ever since. Now, the thing is, there's no confirmed location for the stones, no major museum has them, and it's led most researchers to call this a hoax. But the idea still floats around because with anything like this, there's always the slim chance that it could be real. Back in 1961, a group of rock collectors in Olancha, California found something weird. They cracked open what looked like a geode, a natural rock formation that usually takes thousands or even millions of years to form, but inside they found what looked like a metal cylinder with a coil and a ceramic piece. So people were pretty blown away by this. Some claimed it was an ancient electrical component, maybe proof of lost technology. Others said the rock around it had to be hundreds of thousands of years old. Well, it turns out, once it was inspected more closely, it wasn't ancient. The object was actually a 1920s era Champion spark plug, the kind used in early cars and tractors. The rock wasn't really a geode either. It was a chunk of hardened clay and mineral buildup, which can form around stuff way faster than you'd think under very specific conditions. That didn't stop people from calling it a fossilized machine part, or the Koso artifact as it's come to be known, really running with the idea that it proved time travel, aliens, or some sort of secret civilization once existed. There's a temple in Abydos, Egypt, where the walls have some carvings that at first glance look suspiciously modern, or even futuristic. Some swear you can make out what looks like a helicopter, a tank, what looks like a submarine maybe. These aren't faint outlines, they're surprisingly detailed. So naturally these carvings have been brought up for decades when it comes to ancient alien conspiracies. Proof that Egyptians saw flying machines, time travel, long-lost technology. Well, I'd really like to believe all that stuff, but this explanation is more likely, less dramatic, but interesting all the same. Ancient Egyptian temples would get reused and recarved over time. So new pharaohs would come in, they'd want their own stories on the wall, so they would plaster over the old stuff and carve their own. And over time, the plaster wears off, and now you've got two sets of carvings overlapping each other, creating weird mashups that end up looking like helicopters or spaceships. Deep in the Colombian Amazon, inside the Sariana de la Lendosa cave system, there are cave paintings that go back over 12,000 years, and some of them are pretty weird. Some of the figures look like animals, some look like humans, and some are these strange in-between things. They've got human legs with animal heads or bodies with limbs that seem too long or distorted. They're called therianthropes, half human, half animal beings, and they're scattered all across the wall. Some think they look extraterrestrial, at the very least otherworldly, but archaeologists think they're mythological, not depictions of space aliens. I guess they'd be animorphs. Or animorphs? They're aliens from space, right? And they could be like half human, half animal? Anyway, maybe they're shamans in animal masks or spiritual beings. It's also possible they were drawn while under the influence of some hallucinogenic plants, which some tribes still use in rituals to this day. The paintings are massive in scale, too, stretching across cliff faces, and the level of detail is nuts considering how old they are. Back in the 1930s, someone found a weird-looking rock near a creek in London, Texas. When they broke it open, there was a small hammer sealed inside. The head was made of iron, and the handle looked like it had started turning to stone. The rock around it looked ancient, which made some people think the hammer itself had to be millions of years old. That's what kicked off all the mystery. Some people claim this was proof of lost technology, that humans existed way earlier than we thought and were already making tools. Carl Bau, a creationist, claimed it came from before the biblical flood. But scientists and skeptics think there's a much simpler explanation here, that the hammer looks just like the ones used in the late 1800s for mining, and the rock around it is probably just a concretion, a natural process where minerals and water slowly build up around an object. It doesn't take millions of years. It can happen in decades, again, under the right conditions. Still, it's one of those finds people keep bringing up in conversations about ancient civilizations, time travel, and out-of-place artifacts, including me. Up in northern Kuwait, archaeologists dug up this tiny clay head from about 7,000 years ago, which looks undoubtedly alien. It's got slanted eyes, the long skull, flat nose, very much like a reptilian-type alien creature. The clay itself wasn't from around there. It came from Mesopotamia, so this figurine probably traveled with traders crossing the region. Another interesting thing is that this was found in a regular living space, not some temple or grave, so it was probably part of someone's everyday life, not just some fancy ritual-type thing. And no one really knows exactly what it means, but back then, some tribes used to wrap babies' heads to shape their skulls a certain way, so maybe this might be a depiction of that. Or, it could just be a sculpture of some ancient alien visitor. Off the coast of Veracruz, Mexico, divers found this small jade piece that looks kind of like a corn cob from the future. It's got a cone on top and these perfect little square patterns all over it, carved out of jadeite, a stone that's way harder than steel. No machines, no drills, it was all carved by hand. Dates back to the Olmec era, and archaeologists think it was probably a ceremonial object. Maybe an ornament you'd find on a staff, or something used in rituals tied to corn, which was basically life for them. The fact that it was found underwater adds to the mystery, though. Maybe it was an offering, or it was lost in a flood. The detail is crazy precise, so it almost looks like it could have been made by a machine, but no, it was just ancient craftsmanship. The Ashango bone is a piece of prehistoric bone found near the border of Congo and Uganda, dated to about 24,000 years ago. What's interesting about this bone are the rows of notches carved into it. There are 3 columns of marks that seem way too organized to be random scratches. Some researchers think these marks might represent early math, simple counting, almost like a super ancient calculator or record-keeping tool. This would mean that tens of thousands of years ago, humans were thinking about numbers and patterns more deeply than we typically attribute to them. Way before writing or advanced civilizations, people were already tracking stuff and maybe even doing simple math. There's still debate about what exactly the marks mean, but the Ashango bone pushes back how early we think math started. In Colombia's Cambaya region, archaeologists discovered these small gold figurines that look surprisingly like tiny airplanes. The pieces have shapes that look a lot like wings, tail fins, and a body that looks like a plane's fuselage, stuff that made some people jump to the conclusion that they were proof of ancient alien technology. The artifacts date from between 200 and 900 the years, and they come from the Cambaya culture, which was famous for their incredible metalworking. But most archaeologists think these shapes aren't planes at all. Instead, they're probably meant to be animals like birds, fish, or insects, creatures that were important in their mythology. The shapes might be stylized or a bit abstract, which can look like modern machines to us, but had a totally different meaning back then. But hey, you never know. What is undeniable, though, is the craftsmanship. These tiny figures are so nicely detailed, made from gold so pure it's still shiny after more than 1,000 years. The Ica stones are a bunch of rocks from Peru covered with carvings that show some very strange things, like humans and dinosaurs hanging out together, people doing complex surgeries with advanced tools, and this guy riding around on a giant bird or pterodactyl. They're pretty incredible, but most experts say these stones aren't actually ancient, that they were probably carved sometime in the 1940s by locals trying to make a quick buck selling mysterious ancient artifacts to tourists. Scientists in Turkey just made a huge discovery that could actually prove Noah's Ark was real. For years, they've been looking at this giant structure in eastern Turkey called the Dura Pinar Formation, which some people think could be the location of the Ark. It's 530 feet long and matches the size the Bible describes for the Ark, and it's right near the Turkey-Iran border. Then, just last year, researchers deciphered an ancient Babylonian tablet at the British Museum. The tablet has a poem that talks about a man, probably maybe Noah, and his family landing an ark that was supposed to save life. It also talks about how the world was created, which got people thinking this could link to the Durapanar site. The latest discovery adds even more weight to the idea. Scientists took some rock and soil samples from the site and sent them to Istanbul for testing. The results came back with traces of clay, marine deposits, and tiny seafood bits like mollusks. If Noah really had the ark, those little sea creatures would have been on board as well. The dating of the materials puts them around 3,500 to 5,000 years old, which does line up with when the flood in Genesis is said to have happened, around 3300 BCE. The team believes the area was once covered by water, which could be a sign of a big flood event. Now, even if you're still skeptical, at the very least, this research could be evidence that the Noah's Ark story did have at least some basis in reality. To what extent? That remains to be seen. In the mountains near Napulzi, South Africa, there's something really bizarre carved into a granite cliff, a giant footprint. It's about 4 feet long with 5 distinct toes, an arch, and even what looks like a heel. Some call it the footprint of God. It's so precise that it honestly just looks like someone stepped into the rock while it was still soft. Someone really, really big, mind you. That granite cliff is estimated to be over 200 million years old. That's dinosaur territory. Humans and even our distant ancestors weren't supposed to be anywhere near that timeline, so how do you explain this very human-looking footprint that size in rock this ancient? Scientists say it's just a natural formation that happens to look exactly like a footprint, but come on, really? Like, that's the best explanation we have for this thing? Some just don't buy this, that it can be chalked up to erosion alone. So what then? Is this actually the footprint of some ancient giant? Well, if that's the case, it means it was walking around way before we thought humans ever existed. Of course, no one's claiming giants are 100% confirmed here, but this formation is pretty uncanny. For centuries, the city of Troy was considered nothing more than a good story, a myth cooked up by the Greeks to add some spice to their epic poetry. Homer's Iliad told of gods and heroes, a 10-year siege, a famous wooden horse, and a city that was supposedly wiped off the map. Most historians thought the whole thing was fictional until one eccentric treasure hunter decided to dig. In the 1870s, a German businessman turned amateur archaeologist named Heinrich Schliemann traveled to a dusty hill in modern-day Turkey called Hisarlik. Locals didn't think much of it, it was just another pile of ruins, but Schliemann was convinced that this was the real Troy. Well, after some reckless digging, he literally blasted through layers with dynamite, he discovered stone walls, towers, gates, all these relics from a city that had been destroyed and rebuilt multiple times. One layer, dating to around 1200 BCE, matched the time Homer's war supposedly happened. Among the rubble, Schliemann claimed to find a stash of gold jewelry. Priam's treasure, he called it, after the king of Troy. Whether or not the treasure was authentic is still up for debate, but the city itself, very real. And the deeper archaeologists dug, the more they found that lined up with Homer's account, including signs of a siege and a destruction by fire. So maybe the gods didn't hurl thunderbolts and Achilles didn't have a magical heel, but the war, the city, and the fall, that part might have been true all along. In Hindu mythology, the city of Dwarka is a place of miracles. Built by Lord Krishna, it was said to be a golden city that shimmered on the coastline, full of palaces, gardens, and impossible technology. According to legend, it was so advanced that it had flying machines and automated gates. The entire city supposedly sank beneath the ocean after Krishna's death. For centuries, it was written off as a spiritual allegory, not an actual place. Then came the divers. In the early 2000s, off the coast of Gujarat, marine archaeologists using sonar scans discovered something strange on the ocean floor, a massive grid-like pattern that looked suspiciously like something man-made. They ended up finding stone walls and paved roads spread over a large area, some dating back 9,000 years, older than Egypt's pyramids. They retrieved artifacts too, like pottery shards, stone anchors, and tools, all signs that there was this organized urban area that nobody thought would have existed that early in history. The mainstream scientific world hasn't fully agreed on whether this site is the Dwarka written about in myths, but a lot of Indian scholars believe that it is strong evidence that the legend wasn't just poetic metaphor and that it was based on a real city that got swallowed up by the sea. Story goes that deep beneath the palace of King Minos there was a twisting underground labyrinth built to hold a monster, the Minotaur, half man, half bull, who fed on unlucky prisoners. Every few years, Athens had to send a batch of young people to be tossed in as sacrifices. That's the myth, anyway, and for the longest time, people chalked it up to ancient Greek storytelling. Dramatic and brutal, but made up. But then archaeologists started digging in Knossos on the island of Crete, and what they found was kind of weird. Massive ruins of a palace complex that seemed almost designed to get lost in. Dozens of corridors, staircases that led nowhere, rooms that loop back on themselves, and storage chambers stacked deep underground. It wasn't a literal maze with high stone walls or anything like that, but it had the same confusing, winding structure. Even stranger, the Minoans, the civilization that built it, were obsessed with bulls. They carved bull heads into their art, painted murals of bull leaping ceremonies, and buried bull horns into their foundations. Some historians think that the Minotaur myth might have come from an outsider's twisted interpretation of these Minoan rituals. Throw in earthquakes and a sudden collapse of their society, and you've got all the ingredients for a legend to grow. So maybe there wasn't actually a Minotaur monster lurking around in here, but the palace, the maze, the eerie obsession with bulls, that's real, and this may have been the setting that the legend was based on.
In our number 10 spot today we have the Dybbuk box. The box, which was originally just a plain old wine box, is said to have been possessed by a Dybbuk, which, in Jewish mythology, is a malicious demon that takes over the bodies of living people and uses them for evil. The box began to gain attention in 2001 when it was being auctioned off on eBay. The seller explained that he had bought it at an estate sale of a woman who had survived the Holocaust. When he first opened the box, he found two 1920s pennies, a lock of blonde hair bound with a cord, a lock of black hair bound with a cord, a small statue engraved with the Hebrew word shalom, a small golden wine goblet, one dried rosebud, and a single candle holder with 4 octopus-shaped legs. Since he bought the box, he reported that strange things began happening, such as really horrific nightmares for him and anyone who had stayed around or touched the box, and when he gave the box to his mother as a birthday gift, she suffered a stroke the same day. The box ended up in the hands of Zach Bagan, who is a paranormal investigator, and it now resides in his haunted museum. The box also gained even more attention in 2018 when Post Malone touched it, and has apparently been dealing with the repercussions of that ever since. In our number 9 spot today we have the Iceman. Okay, this one is not an object because it is rather a mummy who was once a real living person, but I still had to include him on this list today because this story is wild. The mummy of Otzi, who is also referred to as the Iceman, was found in 1991 in the Otzal Alps in Italy. It is believed that Otzi lived around 3000 BCE and his body became mummified and preserved because of the glacier that surrounded him post-mortem. While this is an incredibly interesting discovery, the finding of Otzi may have come in a package with an old curse just waiting to be released. Here's the thing, the people who helped with the discovery of Otzi are all dying under mysterious circumstances. I mean, we're currently at person number 7 within 1 year, so that's very suspicious. When molecular archaeologist Tom Loy was writing a book about Otzi, he passed away from a blood-related condition that he was diagnosed with shortly after becoming involved with the Iceman. The German tourist Helmut Simon, who discovered the mummy, fell to his death while hiking in the same spot he saw Otzi. Dieter Warneck, who was the head of the mountain rescue team that was assigned to find the mummy, died of a heart attack at age 45, just an hour after Simon's funeral. To avoid this becoming an hour-long list, I'll stop here, but that is just half of those who seemingly fell victim to the curse of the Iceman. I don't know, maybe disturbing a man who's been in the same spot for 53 centuries wasn't the best idea anyone has ever had. In our number 8 spot today we have the Hope Diamond. This gorgeous, unusually large diamond is a blue color and worth an insane $2 $250 million. In the off chance you have that kind of money laying around, I still wouldn't recommend purchasing it because it is said to be cursed. The curse dates back to the 17th century, and it is said that whoever wears the diamond will have great misfortune and misery. Legend goes that the diamond was stolen from the eye of a sculpted statue of the Hindu goddess Sita, and since then it has been cursing whoever owns or possesses the 115-carat diamond. Stories of the horrible fates of those who have since owned the diamond include people taking their own lives, people being killed intentionally by others, and some accounts even claim that the owner was, quote, torn to pieces, which sounds like one of the worst fates out there. There have since been replicas made of the stone, and I think just to be as safe as possible, I'll probably stay away from those. Just in case. In our number 7 spot today we have Robert the Doll. Annabelle gets a lot of attention for being a haunted doll, but Robert is just as terrifying. Robert the Doll was a childhood birthday gift from a grandfather to his grandson, who was also named Robert, but more often went by Gene. The story claims that while growing up with Robert, Gene would often be heard by his parents in his bedrooms having conversations with himself in 2 entirely different voices. His parents would sometimes be woken up in the middle of the night to the sound of Gene screaming, only to find him completely frightened in bed with overturned furniture around him. Gene would then blame Robert for all of the strange happenings, and at the time, no one really believed him. Gene kept Robert into adulthood, and it became what people would describe as an unhealthy relationship. Apparently, Gene took Robert everywhere with him and spoke as if he was a living entity rather than a doll. Okay, this story is already not great, but it gets worse. Gene lived in a house as an adult that was called the artist's house. Robert would be left in the upstairs window where children in the area reported seeing the doll disappear and reappear, and they all chose to just stay clear of the house. After Gene passed away in 1974, a woman named Myrtle purchased the house, and apparently Robert as well. Visitors of the house could swear that they could hear footsteps and giggling coming from the attic where Robert was, and some even claimed to see the doll's expression changed if someone spoke poorly of Gene. Myrtle reported Robert moving around the house on his own, and after 20 years she decided she had had enough and donated him to a museum. Robert still lives in the museum where he is safely locked up, but it is said that he still likes to place a little curse on those who take his photo without permission. The walls of the museum near Robert's glass case are riddled with notes from previous visitors and naysayers who are begging Robert for his forgiveness and asking him to remove any curse he has placed on them. In our number 6 spot today we have the Atlantis ring. The Atlantis ring was originally made of clay, and it was found in 1860 in the Valley of the Kings in a tomb of an Egyptian high priest. It was then passed on to Howard Carter, who kept it until he passed away in 1939. The ring was believed to be at least 5,000 years old, and it had geometric symbols carved into it that were unlike anything known in Egypt. Here's where the story gets a little weird though. Howard is one of the people who discovered King Tut's tomb, and he would later tell people he was wearing a talisman when the tomb was opened, also known as the Atlantis ring. He claimed that the ring gave him protection, and that just might be true because he is the only member of the team who didn't die a mysterious death after the opening of the tomb. Even those who visited shortly after the opening of the tomb were subject to this curse, with a total of 18 victims in the end. Howard said that the ring is what protected him against whatever evil forces were at play. So I guess maybe the Atlantis ring is more like an anti-cursed object? I don't know, but what I do know is that it is all quite curious. There are now replicas that are sold, but I'm not sure if any hold the power of the real deal. In our number 5 spot today we have Thomas Busby's chair. Thomas was a man who lived in Thirsk, North Yorkshire, and wasn't known as a very nice man, but he really loved his chair. I guess we all gotta have something. In 1702 he found his father-in-law sitting in it, and it sparked an argument between the two. The father-in-law threatened to take his daughter back, which should have never been a threat considering she's a grown woman, but I guess that's what went on in 1702. Anyway, that's when Busby kicked him out of the house. After this, Busby ended up going over to the father-in-law's house and actually killed him with a hammer and then hid his body in the woods. Of course, the body ended up being found, and this led to Busby getting convicted and sentenced to death. It is said that on his ride to the execution, he asked to stop by his favorite pub for a beer, and this request was fulfilled. Apparently, as he finished his drink, he said, "May sudden death come to anyone who dares sit in my chair." I really don't know what it is with this guy in his chair, but while it currently resides in the Thirsk Museum, it has been recorded that many terrible fates have been met by the people who have sat in the chair. In 1972, it was decided to hang the chair from the ceiling so that no one could ever sit in it again, which is probably for the best. So now, knowing this story, I want you to let me know in the comments, if you had the chance, would you sit in the chair? I wouldn't. In our number 4 spot today we have Annabelle the doll. When I saw the 2014 Annabelle movie, I had no idea it was actually based on a real life doll, but since starting my job here at Most Amazing Top 10, I know all about the real story. This doll now resides inside of the Warrens Occult Museum, where it absolutely belongs, but this story starts off with a college student named Donna who received the doll as a gift from her mother, who had purchased it from an antique store. Donna and her roommate started to notice some pretty creepy things happening and swore that the doll was moving. They said it would appear in different places and positions throughout their apartment before things began to escalate. Donna began to find notes that said help in her apartment, and one night found the doll in a different position and covered in some sort of red substance. The girls then decided to contact a medium who solidified all of their beliefs and told them that the doll had been possessed by the spirit of someone who was killed in their apartment building. For some reason, the girls didn't immediately get rid of the doll, and the story goes that their friend Lou, who was at the girls' apartment, heard strange noises one night and went to investigate, and he was then attacked and killed by Annabelle. The girls finally contacted a priest who told them that the doll was possessed by a demon straight from hell, and then put them in contact with Ed and Lorraine Warren. They tried to do an exorcism on the doll, but it apparently failed, and now it is kept in a glass box in the museum, where it hopefully cannot and will never do any more damage. In our number 3 spot today we have the Uluru Rock. The Uluru Rock is a large sandstone formation that is located in the southern part of the Northern Territory in Australia. It is sometimes known as Ayers Rock, but regardless of what it is called, this area is sacred for the people indigenous to this place. This is part of the reason that those who visit the rock are asked not to take anything from the site. Despite this, people of course still choose to smuggle pieces of the rock out of the area and home with them. Well, other than the bad karma and just in general feeling like a bad person for doing the one thing you're asked not to do, as it turns out, this rock may hold a more sinister secret. Those who have stolen rocks from the Uluru have experienced things like extremely bad luck, severe illness, and even sometimes the death of those they love. The curse these rocks hold is seemingly so bad that it is very common for the company that runs the tours of the formation to receive letters of apology that contain the stolen rocks. Apparently these letters come so often, at least one a day is expected. Maybe this is a weird coincidence, but it just seems to be happening a little too often for that to be the explanation. In our number 2 spot today we have the Bazzano vase. The Bazzano vase was cast from silver in the 15th century and was apparently a wedding present for a bride who lived in a small village in Napoli. On the wedding night, however, the bride was found dying on the floor with her hands wrapped around the vase. With her last breaths, she vowed to have her revenge, and at this point it became unclear whether the vase was already cursed, or perhaps if this may be what caused the curse in the first place. As time went on, the vase was handed from person to person within her family, and with each new owner came a mysterious death. Because of this, the family decided to hide the vase away in some sort of secret location, and this worked for a while, until the vase was unearthed once more in 1988. The vase also contained a piece of paper from the family that warned, "Beware, this vase brings death." Well, of course, whoever found the vase did not listen, and instead, they sold it once again. The first buyer, who is said to have been a pharmacist, owned the vase for 3 months before passing away under mysterious circumstances. Then there was the 37-year-old surgeon who died after having the vase for 2 months. After this was the archaeologist who only made it 3 months with this vase in his possession, and at this point you get where this is going. We don't know exactly where the vase ended up, but I'm hoping it's somewhere deep underground. Or maybe in space. Or maybe in the Mariana Trench. Just anywhere far away from all of us. In our number 1 spot today we have the Goddess of Death. This statue is sometimes also known as the Woman from Lem. This artifact, made out of limestone, was created sometime around 3500 BC, and it was found in Cyprus in 1878. Over the years it has belonged to many different families who have all been ruined and dismantled by death. After the first 6 years of ownership, all 7 members of the first family died. It then moved on to a second owner, and after 4 years, death began to come to him and his family. There was then a long period where it was unclaimed, but once the third family got a hold of it, several members of that family began to die as well. The third family ended up turning it over to the Royal Scottish Museum, where it thankfully still resides. However, the museum curator who handled the item was mysteriously killed a few days after. It is clear whatever curse this statue holds, it is strong and frightening. Starting off this list in our number 10 spot, we have Anna Baker's wedding dress. In 1836, a man named Elias Baker purchased a mansion in Altoona, Pennsylvania, and moved his small family in. Elias's oldest daughter was named Anna, and when she fell in love with a steel worker, things took a very dark turn. Anna's father didn't want her dating this man, but she kept doing it in secret. The story goes that Anna and the man planned a secret wedding and they were going to elope. Unfortunately, Elias found out and freaked out. He apparently purchased the steel mill that this man worked for and then forced him to have to move to an entirely different city so as to prevent him from being able to continue seeing Anna. Anna of course was furious with her father, and I'm sure this was only made worse by his decision to offer other men to her, to which she of course declined because that's just weird. Anna instead locked herself in her room with her wedding dress that she never got to wear. Anna unfortunately never married after that and spent the rest of her life being terribly upset about the whole incident. After her death, it is said that her anger and despair ended up going into the wedding dress. Members of the Baker family reported seeing the dress in different places around the house despite no one moving it themselves. Some have even reported seeing Anna's spirit dressed in the gown around the house as well. In our number 9 spot today, we have The Hands Resist Him. The Hands Resist Him is a painting created by artist Bill Stoneham, and it is supposed to represent the doorway that connects our world with the world of the spirits. The doorway to the other side. This is extra suspicious considering owners of the painting have claimed that they have seen the characters in the painting move, or sometimes even disappear at night. The painting is said to depict Bill as a child looking quite sad with a doll with creepy hollow eyes. In the background you can see mysterious hands reaching out towards the boy. The creepiness of the painting is only elevated when we hear the stories of the reported 3 people who passed away after coming into contact with the painting. It ended up kind of disappearing for around 15 years until it popped back up on eBay. Even then, the seller warned potential buyers that the painting was haunted and claimed that the boy in the painting would come out of it and scare their child. The painting ended up being sold for $1,025 to a buyer in Michigan, and at this point it's unclear if they've had any troubles with the rumored hauntings and curses. In our number 8 spot today, we have the cursed phone number. I didn't know a phone number could be cursed, but apparently it's true, and I know a phone number technically isn't an object, but I still feel like this had to be included today because it's just too crazy to not. There was a Bulgarian phone number that is said to have been in use for 10 years before it was closed. The reason why it ended up being closed and put out of use is because it is rumored to have belonged to 3 separate people who all died of mysterious circumstances after having been assigned the phone number. Apparently all of the deaths took place shortly after the person had been assigned the number, and they were all seemingly a bit suspicious, thus the rumors of the cursed telephone number began to spread. After this, the company made the decision to suspend the phone number, and they didn't give out details as to why. I wonder if the two are related. In our number 7 spot today, we have the Belcourt Castle chairs. Belcourt Castle is located in Newport, Rhode Island, and it is a former summer cottage. Construction on the cottage started in 1891, with it being completed in 1894, and inside there is a ballroom. The ballroom is important because it is said that it holds a group of haunted chairs. People who have visited the castle have reported a ton of strange happenings regarding this specific set of chairs. The reports include things like feeling chills racing up and down their spines, or feeling a strange sensation in a shift of energy while standing near the chairs, and some people have even explained how they have been pushed out of the chairs by an invisible force. I feel like just hearing stories might be enough to explain the energy shift some people are feeling, but actually being pushed out of a chair by some sort of invisible force would be absolutely terrifying.
First up, we have the Canaanite shipwreck. Just back in June of 2024, in the deep waters off the coast of Israel, researchers found a shipwreck unlike anything they'd ever seen before. It's from the late Bronze Age, dating back more than 3,300 years. That alone is rare, but what makes this discovery even more unusual is where it was found, nearly a mile beneath the surface, resting upright on the seafloor like it never even tipped. The ship still carried its cargo, hundreds of clay jars, sealed tight, possibly with oil or wine. There were no bones, there was no signs of a fire, just this vessel from another another time, perfectly preserved in the cold dark. It's believed to be the oldest deep-sea shipwreck ever found, and the fact that it was out in open water, not close to shore, means that these ancient Canaanites may have been long-distance seafarers, something history hadn't confirmed until now. The site feels untouched, almost too untouched. For how long this ship's been sitting down there, it's in pretty good condition. Just this wooden ghost alone in the black depths of the water. Not far off Italy's western coast, under the blue waters of the Tyrrhenian Sea, sits the ruins of what appears to be a Nabatean temple. It shouldn't be there. The Nabateans, known for building Petra in present-day Jordan, were desert people. Traders, yes, but builders of temples in Italy? That wasn't part of the story until this discovery in 2023. At first, researchers thought it might be Roman. After all, there are plenty of Roman ruins along the coast, but when they took a closer look at the architecture, they realized it didn't match the Roman style at all. In fact, some inscriptions pointed east, back toward the Nabateans' homeland. The remnants of this place looked a lot like one of their temples. It was just sitting in the wrong place. There had been local legends of a drowned shrine off the coast, but no one knew exactly what it was. Some think it could have been sunk by an earthquake, which isn't usual in this area, but there's no record of the temple anywhere. It's not in any Roman texts, there's no mention of it in any ancient accounts. It was lost to history. The biggest question of all, though, is why did the Nabateans build a temple this far from home? Back in 2020, off Australia's northwest coast, archaeologists found something unexpected beneath the ocean. In places that are now completely submerged, they discovered ancient Aboriginal stone tools, hearths, and signs of long-lost camps. These sites are at least 8,500 years old, maybe even older. That means people once lived here, cooked their food here, made tools here, on land that hasn't been dry since the last ice age. Sea levels rose slowly, swallowing the coastline bit by bit. The people moved inland, but the sites they left behind stayed where they were, preserved under layers of salt water and silt. The tools are simple stone blades, flakes, a grinding platform, but they're unmistakably human. Aboriginal groups have stories that go way back about rising waters, and now we've got the evidence to back that up. These aren't just old artifacts, they're part of a bigger story, one that's been passed down for generations. There's probably way more out there too, other ancient sites just waiting to be discovered. Every new find adds another layer to the history of people who knew this land and the sea way better than we ever realized. On the island of Abaco in the Bahamas, there's a deep circular pool known as Sawmill Sink. It looks calm from above, but under the surface, it drops into complete darkness. Divers exploring it have found the remains of animals that no longer exist. Giant tortoises, an extinct species of crocodile, and birds that haven't flown for thousands of years. Some of the bones still have soft tissue on them too. That's how untouched this place is. But it's not just animals. In 2004, divers found the nearly complete skeleton of a young woman. She lived over 1,000 years ago. Her body had sunk into the sinkhole and was preserved almost perfectly, sealed in the still, oxygen-poor water. Her bones told stories about her diet, her life, her people. She's one of the oldest intact human remains found in the Caribbean. This one also comes straight out of the Bible, the book of John to be exact. Jesus heals a blind man by spitting in the dirt, making mud, smearing it on the guy's eyes, and then telling him to go wash it off in the pool of Siloam. Man does, and boom, he can see. For centuries, religious folks believed in the story, but most scholars treated it like a symbolic tale. The pool itself thought to be just a part of biblical folklore. Nice message, not a real place. Well, that changed in 2004, when city workers in Jerusalem were doing some basic repairs on a busted sewage pipe. And while digging, they hit stone steps, and not just a few. What they'd stumbled onto was the edge of this large ancient pool, complete with wide stone staircases leading down into the water. Archaeologists swarmed the site and confirmed it. This wasn't just any old reservoir. This was the pool of Siloam, exactly where the gospel said it would be. They found coins and pottery and other items buried in the mud, all dating back to the Second Temple period, right around the time Jesus would have been walking those streets. The whole layout matched historical texts, and it was clearly used by Jewish pilgrims for ritual cleansing before heading up to the temple. So yeah, they found the pool, and while no one's out here claiming they can prove the miracle, the place where it supposedly happened, that is real, and it sat buried under a modern city for nearly 2,000 years. For a long time, people argued that King David, the guy who took down Goliath with a rock and ruled over a united Israel, might not have been a real person. Some scholars thought he was more of a legendary figure, like King Arthur, inspiring, sure, but no solid evidence to prove he actually existed outside of religious texts. Then in 1993, something odd popped out of the dirt in northern Israel. At an ancient site called Tel Dan, archaeologists came across this broken slab of black basalt with writing carved into it. An inscription in Aramaic dating to the 9th century BCE. It had been repurposed as building material in a wall, which probably helped preserve it. When experts started translating the writing, one phrase jumped out: House of David. This was a huge deal. It was the first time David was mentioned outside of the Bible. It showed that not only did David likely exist, but that his lineage, his dynasty, was powerful and well known enough to be name dropped by his enemies. The stone seems to have been set up by a rival king, bragging about defeating both the king of Israel and someone from the house of David. This doesn't just back up the idea of a real King David, it gave us a glimpse into how feared and influential his bloodline was. For centuries, people treated the legend of the Amazon warrior women from Greek mythology like pure fantasy. Tall, fierce, battle-hardened women who lived in their own society and didn't take orders from any man. That had to be the stuff of legend, right? Well, no, it turns out the Greeks might have been describing a real group after all. Archaeologists have discovered a number of burial mounds called kurgans in the Eurasian steppes, particularly in southern Russia and Ukraine, and contain the remains of women buried with weapons, armor, and horses. Their bones showed signs of battle injuries, and some were buried in the exact same style as elite male warriors. The Scythians, a nomadic people who lived around 2,500 years ago, were known to the Greeks and might have been the real-life inspiration for the Amazon myths. In fact, nearly 1/3 of all Scythian warrior graves found in these areas belonged to women. If you've ever seen Raiders of the Lost Ark, which I surely hope you have, you probably remember Tanis as the city where the Ark of the Covenant was supposedly buried. In the movie, it's this mythical sand-swallowed place full of curses and lost treasures. But what most people don't realize is that Tanis was real, and what archaeologists found there was just as wild as the legend. Found in the Nile Delta, Tanis was an actual ancient Egyptian city, once the capital of the 21st and 22nd dynasties. For a long time, people thought it was just another pile of ruins. Nothing special really, but in the 1930s, French archaeologist Pierre Montet started digging and came across something incredible. Royal tombs that hadn't been touched by looters. That's almost unheard of in Egypt. Inside these tombs were solid silver coins, gold masks, and jewelry that rivaled what was found in Tut's tomb even. Montet even found inscriptions and relics that referenced powerful priest kings and mysterious religious practices. It was the kind of treasure haul that made people wonder if those old stories about lost cities full of sacred artifacts might have had some truth to them after all. Now, no, they didn't find the actual Ark of the Covenant in Tanis, but the fact that the city was real, lost for centuries, and hiding all these untouched treasures, that was pretty cool. So there's this ancient scroll that lists every ruler in history, kings, dynasties, battles, floods, but half of it reads like pure science fiction. It's called the Sumerian King List, a strange cuneiform tablet found by archaeologists in Iraq. Copies of it date back over 4,000 years. The list starts with kings who supposedly ruled for thousands of years. One guy, Alulim, was said to have reigned for 28,800 years. Then there's a line that says the flood swept over, which sounds an awful lot like the biblical flood. And after that, the reign lengths suddenly become more reasonable, and the names start matching up with known historical figures. So what's going on here? Some scholars think that the early parts of the list were myths meant to make the rulers seem more godlike, but the artifact does kind of blur the line between legend and record.
In our number 6 spot today, we have The Anguished Man. While it is unknown who or when it was created, this painting is said to carry some kind of a curse. It is rumored that whoever created it mixed his blood with the oil paint, and when he finished creating it, he ended up taking his own life. When a woman who is referred to as Mrs. Robinson originally took possession of the painting after it was given to her by a family friend, she immediately knew that something was wrong with it. She ended up passing it along to her grandson Sean, who currently still owns the painting. When Sean hung the painting up, they apparently started experiencing paranormal events. The Robinson family has reported many different strange events that have happened in relation to the painting, such as hearing screams and groans coming from it, as well as hearing doors creaking when no one is around them, and being awoken in the middle of the night by blood-curdling screams that they can't find the source of. Sean has even uploaded videos to YouTube where he shows these paranormal events, and it has been reported that the family now keeps the painting hidden away in the basement, which is probably for the best. In our number 5 spot today, we have The Dark Mirror. This mirror now resides within the Traveling Museum of the Paranormal and Occult, and just that alone is enough to know it deserves a spot on today's list. The museum received this mirror from the owner who had purchased it from a psychic fair. It is believed that this mirror was created sometime around the 1820s or 30s, and it is actually quite beautiful to look at, despite the sinister things it seems to hold. The owner who gave it to the museum explained that every time they peered into the mirror, they saw these extremely upsetting things while looking into the dark mirror's reflection. The museum has said that since they added the mirror to their collection, there have been guests who have also reported the same kind of things. Guests have claimed to see things reflected back at them like sightings of their own corpse. In our number 4 spot today, we have Old Nick. Old Nick is often referred to as the Swansea Devil, and his story dates back to the 1890s, although he now resides in the Swansea Museum. So, back in the 1890s, there was the prestigious St. Mary's Church located right in the center of town. The church decided to do some renovations and they put out some ads to hire someone. When a local builder applied for the job and was turned down, he had a major overreaction and decided he wanted to get some kind of revenge. He went and bought the row of cottages that lay next to the church and then demolished them all. In their place, he built large brick offices and then commissioned the carving of Old Nick and placed him right on top of the office building, looking down at St. Mary's Church. Legend goes that he even placed the curse himself by saying, quote, "When your church is destroyed and burnt to the ground, my devil will remain laughing," end quote. Some years later, during World War II, a German blitz came through the town and it left most of it, including St. Mary's, completely destroyed and burnt to the ground. But the office building with Old Nick was undamaged and remained standing. For a while, Old Nick seemed to kind of disappear, but once he resurfaced, there was a petition to put him back to where he was before, as well as a subsequent counter-petition to put him far, far away from the rebuilt St. Mary's Church. As of now, Old Nick resides behind glass in the Swansea Museum, and it is said that he is enclosed in glass more for our protection rather than his. In our number 3 spot today, we have The Cursed Portrait. Bernardo de Galvez was born in Spain in 1746, and he went on to become a military leader. He became well known for helping American colonies during the War of Independence before he apparently passed away under mysterious circumstances in 1786. There is a portrait of Bernardo that resides in the Galvez Hotel in Galveston, Texas, which is said to be one of the most haunted hotels in the world, and that makes sense because this portrait is said to be one of the cursed objects that gives the hotel its spooky title. The portrait is located at the end of a hallway in the hotel, and guests have reported the eyes following their every move. People also report a cold or uncomfortable feeling when they get close to the painting, and this is said to be Bernardo's spirit. Some people even swear they can feel him following them around the hotel. It is also said that any picture you try to take of the portrait will come out blurry and distorted unless you ask Bernardo for permission first. In our number 2 spot today, we have the Koh-i-Noor diamond. This diamond has an extremely controversial history and is the source of a lot of debate, but regardless of the ongoing conversations over who really owns it, we are here to talk about the curse that this stone is said to hold. This diamond dates back thousands of years, and its curse is said to only affect men. It is said that the jewel can bring about great wealth, but it can also bring great misfortune as well to those who own it. Folklore states that he who owns this diamond will own the world, but will also know all of its misfortunes. Only God or women can wear it with impunity. Throughout the history of the diamond, it was passed among many people and rulers who all fought bloody battles while in possession of it. Every prince who had it is said to have ultimately lost either their power or their life while in possession of it as well. Part of the controversy of the diamond is how it ended up in the hands of the British royal family during colonization in the 1800s. Ever since then, it has only been worn by female monarchs, including Queen Victoria and Queen Elizabeth. In our number 1 spot today, we have James Dean's car. Okay, this one might seem like a bit of a wild card, but hear me out. Famous actor James Dean passed away from a car accident on September 30th, 1955. At the time, he was driving his silver Porsche 550 Spyder, which he had just recently purchased. This was only the beginning of the car's curse, however, as after James' passing, the remnants of the totaled car were bought by a man named George Barris. He decided to sell parts of the car to James' fans, but when the car was being worked on and taken apart, it ended up falling on a mechanic and it crushed him to death. These two incidents are more than enough to now consider the car cursed, but it still continues on. Once the people who had purchased some of the car parts began receiving them, more strange things happened. 3 of the people who received parts ended up in car accidents, all of which were sadly quite severe. The shell of the car was also stolen, and to this day, it has never been recovered. Starting off this list in our number 10 spot, we have the Crying Children paintings. These paintings were a series created by an Italian painter who is known as Giovanni Bragolin, but his real name was Bruno Amarillo. Bruno was born in Venice in 1911 and fought in World War II, which ended up being the inspiration for a lot of his paintings. During his time in the war, he saw a lot of suffering children, and this is where he got the idea for the series of Crying Children paintings. After the paintings were sold, there began to be reports of fires in all of the places where the paintings were held. While this could have just been a strange coincidence, the weirdest part is that the paintings always remained intact while everything else around them was burned. This quickly became the most talked about thing and was on the front of every newspaper, and the paintings quickly gained the nickname Diablo. It caused these paintings to end up being replicated and mass produced, but none of the replicas hold quite the same power as the originals. In our number 9 spot today, we have the Blarney Stone. For hundreds of years, the Blarney Stone has resided within Blarney Castle, which is near Cork, Ireland. The stone is a piece of limestone, and legend says that those who give the stone a smooch will then be given the gift of the gab. This little smooch can bestow the power of being able to talk your way out of any situation, which would be incredibly useful, but there are always those who try to indulge in too much of a good thing. The issues start when you attempt to take a piece of the stone, no matter how small, away from its home. Those who don't follow the rules and take the stone end up being cursed with bad luck. Every year the castle receives parcels from greedy tourists who tried their luck at stealing portions of the stone. These parcels are returned with the intention of lifting the curse of misfortune. It is said that once the stone is returned, the curse will be lifted, which is most definitely good news. I guess the moral of this curse, however, is to not be greedy and to just follow the rules. In our number 8 spot today, we have the Screaming Skull. The Screaming Skull resides in the Burton Agnes Hall in England, and it is thought to have belonged to Catherine Anne Griffith. It is said that Catherine was the youngest in the family, and she was the one who enjoyed wandering around the property the most. One day while she was out strolling around, she ended up being surrounded by a group of robbers who took all of her possessions and then viciously harmed her and left her for dead. She was found and brought back to the hall to be tended to, but unfortunately a few days later she succumbed to her injuries. Before she died, she was upset about the thought of leaving her family, so she asked them to remove her head after death and keep her skull so that they would always have a piece of her around. The family agreed to her face, but after her passing they buried her body, head still intact, because to be fair, it was an odd request. After her burial, the family began experiencing some extremely strange things around the house, like bumps and moans and horrible blood-curdling screams that they could not find the source of. This is when they decided to follow through with the request Catherine had left them, and the strange occurrences suddenly stopped. After this, at one point a maid had found the skull, and in her surprise, she threw it out of a nearby open window, and alas, the strange occurrences began again. In the end, it was decided that the best policy was to place the skull in a secret spot within the walls of the house, probably behind some paneling in the Great Hall so that its presence could be easily ignored, and so that Catherine's spirit could reside in peace in her beloved home. I guess the lesson of this one is to follow the wishes of those who have passed, because you never know if their spirit is gonna stay lingering around afterwards. afterwards. In our number 7 spot today we have the haunted doll. There's quite a few haunted dolls kicking around out there apparently, but this one doesn't exactly have a name. The doll's owners say that this doll is possessed and causes lots of troubles at night. The incredibly creepy thing about this one is that it is said that you don't need to do anything in order for this doll to decide it wants to haunt you. You just simply need to be around it, and that is more than enough for the torment to start. Owners of the doll have reported getting a bunch of strange scratches which they believe are because of the doll. It isn't exactly clear where the spirit or spirits that reside in this doll have come from or what happened, but the doll was bought from its previous owners by a woman named Deborah Davies, who is a psychic. Deborah reported the same scratches as the previous owners, but she also may have been able to contact the spirit residing in the doll. She claimed that the spirit was that of a young girl who had her life taken from her, but she also reported that the nasty evil energy within the doll is a male, and she believes that this energy is that of the man who took the life of the girl. At the end of the day, whatever is haunting this doll is certainly a spirit I would like to stay far, far away from. In our number 6 spot today we have the ballista balls. A ballista was used in the Roman military, and it was kind of similar to a crossbow, but much larger, and it could shoot arrows or stones. In 1989, there were archaeologists that were working by the Israeli-Syrian border when they found these large stones close to what seemed to be the remains of a ballista, but around 1995 the stones ended up getting stolen, and it took a while for anyone to notice. Fast forward to 2015 and the same stones that were stolen ended up in the courtyard of a museum in Israel with a note left from the person who stole them. The note explained that ever since they took them, he had experienced terrible luck and believed the stones were the reason. He had a very successful business that suddenly began to fail after he took the stones, and later his family abandoned him and he was forced to get rid of almost all of his possessions to settle all of his debts so as to not go bankrupt. He mentioned that he believed the stones were cursed and that they were the root of all of his problems. Whether or not these stones are actually cursed or if this was just some pretty heavy karma, I hope this guy has been able to get his life back on track. In our number 5 spot today we have the Golden Eagle. This car was a 1964 Dodge 330 limited edition, and it has been blamed for the death of around 14 people, which is 14 too many if you ask me. It was said that this car started out as a police car originally, but then there were 3 officers assigned to this car who all ended up taking their lives and other people's lives in horribly violent ways. Not in the car, but still, super weird that this all seemed to happen after they had been using the car for work. Because of this strange correlation, it ended up being sold off to another man. Throughout the 80s and 90s, it was said that because of the rumored cursed car, it became a point of interest for vandals. People began vandalizing the car only to meet their own untimely fates, which were all met in strange ways. For example, it was said that one vandal died from being struck by lightning, and another ended up being decapitated by an 18-wheeler. It is said that the curse is so strong that one kid decided to merely touch the car and it sent him into madness, as he went on to commit atrocious crimes that I can't even detail here on YouTube. The car now belongs to Wendy Allen, who supposedly collects and decorates haunted cars for a living, so it seems as though it's finally found its home far, far, far away from everyone else. In our number 4 spot today we have the Myrtle's Plantation Mirror. Myrtle's Plantation is located in St. Francisville, Louisiana, and it is said to be one of the most haunted places in the entire world. One of the reasons for this spooky reputation is because of a mirror that resides inside. It is said that this mirror holds the spirit of Sarah Woodruff and her 2 children. Legend goes that a woman named Chloe was a slave at the plantation who drew up a plan to get revenge on the owners of the plantation, Sarah and her husband. Chloe baked a cake full of poison for them, but it ended up only being Sarah and 2 of her children who consumed the poisonous cake. When they passed away, it is said that their spirits went into the only mirror that was uncovered at the time, thus the haunted mirror was born. People who have since visited the plantation have claimed to see the family in the reflection, as well as the handprints of small children on the glass, despite continuous polishing. In our number 3 spot today we have the Surrey Ghost Car. On December 11th of 2002, a call came into the Surrey Police Department. The caller reported that they had just seen a car lose control and run off the road and then presumably crash. It was of course an emergency call, but not necessarily anything out of the ordinary. That was until authorities got to the location and realized that they couldn't find any kind of evidence of a crash. They kept searching and ended up finding a maroon colored car that was nose down in a ditch nearby, but this car was covered in so much undergrowth that it must have been here for months. This meant that somehow this crash went undetected for 5 months, and worst of all, so did the body that lay nearby. Using dental records, they were able to identify the body as a man who had been wanted for robbery since July of that year. It is said that the sighting of the car leaving the road was a ghostly replay of the events that had taken place 5 months prior. What do you guys think? Let me know down below in the comments if you think the witness saw a cursed reenactment of the fatal crash, or if you think something else is at play here. In our number 2 spot today we have the Destiny Ring. Rudolph Valentino was an incredibly famous silent film star before he passed away at the incredibly young age of just 31 years old, and there are many out there who believe his untimely death was caused by the Destiny Ring. This ring was one that he picked up from a California jeweler. Before purchasing it, there were warnings of the stories which claimed this ring was cursed, but Rudolph decided to go ahead with the purchase anyway. It is said that after this ring came into his possession, his luck began to turn. The movies he starred in started to do poorly, some even flopping, and his career began to struggle. From there he fell incredibly ill, and when he passed away he was wearing this cursed ring. From there, after his death, his lover ended up receiving the ring, but once it was in her possession she too fell extremely ill and decided to give the ring away. All the owners after that were reported to have died in strange ways or under mysterious circumstances, which has led the ring to now being placed in a bank vault, all locked up so that it hopefully can never cause harm to anyone ever again. In our number 1 spot today we have Letta the doll. Why do all the cursed dolls look like they would be cursed? You know what I mean? Like, there's no cursed doll out there that is surprisingly cursed. They all look creepy to begin with. Anyway, Letta is a doll that is said to be around 200 years old and extremely cursed. This doll is called Letta for short, as its full name is Letta Me Out of Here. Really clever. The doll was originally found underneath a house, which definitely feels like the origin story of a haunted doll. This creepy discovery came 47 years ago, and apparently Letta still lives with the man who found him. The hauntings of Letta include things like the doll walking around on its own at night, the owners finding objects around the house that have been moved into odd places. Some people have seen Letta move right in front of their own eyes, and the owner also reports finding little doll-sized scuff marks around the house as well. It is said that this doll once belonged to a child who passed away while holding it, thus their spirit became trapped inside of the doll. Apparently one day in an interview about Letta, as the interviewer was asking questions about the little boy, the doll began to move in her lap. Yeah, no thank you. Letta has his own Instagram and Facebook page in case you want to hear more about all the creepiness surrounding this cursed doll.
Just north of Dublin along Portmarnock Beach, the ocean's been giving up some secrets, literally. After a big storm in 2024, locals noticed something strange poking out of the sand. At first glance, it looked like old driftwood, but no, this was a shipwreck. Not just a piece of it either, pretty much the whole thing, at least the shape of it anyway, which had been buried for who knows how long. Turns out, this wasn't the first time the beach had coughed up pieces of a ship, but this time it got the attention of Ireland's National Monuments Service, and they came out to investigate. They already knew about that particular wreck from a few years ago, but while they were out there, they also found 3 more shipwrecks hidden just beneath the sand. These wrecks are believed to be from the 1800s, maybe even older. They're made from thick wooden beams held together with old school iron bolts, and even though the wood's rotted and soaked in salt, the craftsmanship still holds up. This stretch of coast is actually a bit of a ship graveyard. Around 50 wrecks have been recorded in the area, from centuries-old trading ships to coal boats. Most of them were just unlucky, caught in bad weather with no one around to help and no one left to tell the story. And because of shifting sands and powerful tides, these wrecks come and go. Sometimes they're visible, sometimes the beach just swallows them right back up. In 2012, divers working off the coast near the Croatian island of Ilovik found what turned out to be a part of a Roman cavalry helmet, submerged and buried in sand for centuries. It was found in a relatively shallow patch of sea not far from where other Roman-era items had washed up. This particular helmet fragment, heavily corroded but still identifiable, wasn't part of some grand archaeological dig. It was actually found by a recreational diver who later turned it over to authorities. What makes this interesting is the context. The area was part of a Roman naval route. Ilovik sits in the Adriatic, not far from ancient Roman settlements along the Dalmatian coast. This helmet, likely dating back to the 1st or 2nd century, may have belonged to a Roman soldier who went down with his ship, or it was lost during transport. Unlike the overhyped treasures of the deep, this artifact is simple, just a piece of someone's life, someone who probably didn't think, or at least want to think, that they'd end up at the bottom of the sea. In 2007, a team of researchers scanning Lake Michigan's floor made a strange discovery. They weren't really looking for anything, they were just mapping out the lake bed, but then they saw it. This circle of stones arranged deliberately, sitting 40 feet underwater. It looked like something out of Europe, something old. One of the stones even had what appeared to be a mastodon carved into it. The site hasn't been explored much since then, which is surprising. The waters are pretty murky, though, which makes it more challenging. Skeptics were pretty quick to dismiss this, saying it was just rocks that settled naturally, but the pattern, the symmetry, and the fact that one of the stones has an ancient mastodon carved into it, yeah, it definitely seems like there's more to this site than just a series of rocks. If it really is ancient, older than Stonehenge, it would change what we know about prehistoric people in North America. It would mean someone was building monuments here before written history, before cities, before anything we recognize. Off the western coast of Cuba, in waters over 2,000 feet deep, sonar scans revealed something that shouldn't be there. Massive symmetrical structures, straight lines, right angles, pyramids, or what really look like pyramids. It was first discovered in the early 2000s by a Canadian research team. They were expecting to find shipwrecks. Instead, they found what some would call an underwater city. The layout seems to suggest streets and plazas and buildings spread out over several square miles, but here's the problem. The site is so deep that if it really is man-made, it would have been at least 10,000 years old. That's before any known advanced civilization, before Egypt, before Sumer, even before the supposed rise of organized society as we know it. Some scientists are pretty skeptical, saying it's just a natural rock formations, but the shapes are unusually geometric, too clean, and there's no clear geological explanation for how they ended up arranged like that. The site hasn't been fully explored. Deep sea dives are expensive, and the Cuban government hasn't prioritized any further investigation here, so whatever's down there is just sitting and waiting. Just off the coast of southern Greece lies the ruins of Pavlopetri, a city that's now entirely underwater. You can still see the streets, the building foundations and tombs, all laid out clearly on the seafloor. It's over 5,000 years old, one of the oldest submerged cities ever found. Pavlopetri wasn't destroyed by war or fire, it just sank slowly, piece by piece, after a series of earthquakes and rising sea levels. What's left is incredibly well preserved. No one ever built over it. No scavengers took the stone. It's just there, untouched under the waves. Divers have mapped out more than 15 buildings here. Some still have dividing walls. Some even had plumbing. People lived their entire lives here, close to the sea that eventually claimed it. Pavlopetri matches descriptions from ancient texts about cities swallowed by water. Some even link it loosely to the Atlantis myth. That's a stretch, sure, but when you see how complete the ruins are, it's hard not to wonder how many other cities might be submerged out there. Near the island of Bimini in the Bahamas, there's a line of these huge stone blocks resting on the seafloor. They stretch out in a near straight path for hundreds of feet, like a broken causeway leading into the deep. Some call it Bimini Road, others say it's part of something much older. The stones look placed, not random. Each one is rectangular, some over 10 feet long, and they fit together in a way that doesn't seem natural. Divers first found them in the 1960s, and ever since people have been arguing about what they are. Geologists say it's just a natural formation caused by erosion and fracturing, but the layout does feel deliberate. Some believe it's a remnant of an ancient harbor, or again, maybe even part of the lost city of Atlantis. And that's not just because it looks like the remains of a part of a city that's now underwater. See, Bimini Road sits very near where a supposed clairvoyant predicted that Atlantis would be found. A man named Edgar Cayce, who died in 1945. So that little detail has just helped fuel the rumors. But was Bimini Road actually a road, or does it just really happen to look like one? Perhaps we'll never really know.